Hey, how's it going? Mike from LI Flies Mike. And real quick before we get started, be certain to use your hype points. You get 5 free hypes a day, and it's a way to support your favorite creators here on YouTube. So as always, the full list of materials will be down in the description below. And today we're going to be tying a very interesting fly. So while I was looking at some of the E-ZBody packaging that was sent to me from Bill at E-ZBody, I saw this Albie spoon. It's designed by Capt and Gil Berke, and you can see it uses pretty much just E-ZBody that's flattened, and we're going to be bending the hook and essentially creating our own spoon fly, if you will. And I haven't messed around with spoon flies much, so this would be pretty interesting. We're essentially just using some large E-ZBody here. We're going to be using the pearl E-ZBody. That package is actually the tinsel or silver one, but you can see here I cut off a section for the size hook we're going to be using, and we're going to be making a tube fly using the E-ZBody and some UV resin or epoxy. So we're going to be using a Mustad O'Shaughnessy hook here. Now ideally, I will say you probably want a 2x lawn hook. This is only a 1x lawn hook. It'll work, but a lawner shank hook will allow you to essentially have a little bit more room to play with and get in a more exaggerated bend. And you'll see what we're going to be doing here. But first things first, before we get started, we need to completely flatten this tubing. The E-ZBody isn't completely rigid, but it does hold its form pretty good. So we're going to use some smooth pliers here. It mentions unknurling pliers, but I'm not even really certain what those are used for. Presume unknurling something. I'm going to use these smooth jeweler's pliers and just compress the E-ZBody and squeeze it at the same time to try and flatten it as best as I can. And after applying some pressure here and doing it a couple of times, you can see how the E-ZBody now has been essentially squished down and isn't going to expand back up to its open shape. And one thing I found here is that by kind of pulling on the material on the side, you can kind of stretch it, and then you can squeeze it back and get it nice and flat. So after kind of compressing it down, you can see we've gotten it almost completely flat here. We can work on trying to get the shape to the E-ZBody. I don't really have much experience with spoon flies, but over the years I've seen many redfish spoons that have come out from places like North Carolina or down that way. What we're going to do is we're going to create an S shape. This isn't going to be like a traditional spoon where it's kind of like a crescent or half moon. We're essentially going to create an S shape with the E-ZBody and then put a bend in the hook. You can see here I'm compressing the material to try and achieve that S shape. It's a little bit easier to see and visualize once we bend the hook here what we're trying to achieve. But essentially we're going to have an S with the more exaggerated lawner side sticking off the back. So just trying to get the basic shape that I'm working with here. I was lucky enough to have Bill send me some photos from E-ZBody. I'll try and be certain to put some photos in here of some of the originals of these flies. But by just taking my fingers here, I can kind of bend the material to the shape that I like and try and get the S shape that I'm looking for. To achieve the kink in the hook, we're going to actually have to bend the hook. So you can see the shape that we're going to try and go for with this. And to achieve that with the hook, we actually need to bend the shank. So I'm going to go about 1/3 or almost halfway back, and I'm just going to slightly bend this Mustad hook. And what this is going to do is this is going to give us that kink facing down so we can achieve that S shape in the front section here. So you can see here now how that material kind of matches, or the hook matches, the shape of the material that we bent. So now after just sizing up the material next to the hook a couple times, I'm just kind of rebending and trying to get the material to the shape that I want it before I commit and stick the hook into the tubing. You can see here now we're going to slip the hook, and I'm going to try and get it directly in the middle. Now one thing I want to point out is that I probably could have went further back. This is where having a lawner shank hook helps, and you can go further back right up to the bend of that E-ZBody there. But Essentially all we needed to do is try and line up the tubing to where it's not going to stick past the hook eye, and get it to where we like it, to where we can tie it down, and just make sure to get that hook penetrating the E-ZBody directly in the middle so the fly is completely centered. And you can see here now, this is the E-ZBody on the hook. You can see the shape that we got, and just trying to line up the material to the hook and shape the material if need be. Slipping the material back here so I can bend that tail section. I kind of want, the way to think about this fly is, imagine like an injured baitfish, and essentially it could be in shock, it could even potentially have been hurt in the carnage of the blitzing bait balls, and this thing is kind of just wounded and slowly sinking down and fluttering down towards the bottom. This is how this fly will be fished. You're not going to be stripping this sort of fly. You're going to be essentially fishing. It was designed to be fished with a sink tip around either bait or blitzing fish, and you let the fly kind of naturally flutter down with a sinking line, and with an occasional twitch. So it's a very particular sort of fly. I don't think if you try and strip this fly, it'll probably just spin. Again, I don't have much experience with spoon flies in general, but from what I was told, this fly is more of it's a very specific style of fly. But I feel like there could be other applications, potentially in freshwater, things like that, or other applications than just fishing next to a bait ball. But again, due to the design and the shape with your leader, it'll probably spin on you. So now here, all we're going to do is take our thread and we're going to tie down this E-ZBody. Now it's important to try and get as smooth of a tie as you can, and try and not pinch that E-ZBody. I actually ended up pinching the E-ZBody slightly. So you can see here, I'm trying to pull it to flatten it down. If you end up pinching it, it'll have like a raised section. So again, just stretching the material, and then you'll also see I can take my pliers here and just kind of compress it down and just make sure that that material isn't sticking up. We essentially kind of want like a flat profile is what we're trying to achieve. It's okay if we want some 3D profile to it, but we don't want it to be too bulbous on either side. So now what we can do is take our thread here and just throw a whip finish on here, cut our thread off. We can take the fly out of the vise, and you can see I'm just kind of checking out the shape. I'm even bending the hook here just a little bit more and visualizing what this fly is going to look like. And after tying it on, it should be nice and secure. We can kind of take the material and pull it on the sides and stretch it. I want it to be wider in the middle than it is in the rear and the front, so you can see how we're kind of achieving that natural baitfish profile by stretching that material. So I think what you could do is you could probably just tie the end of the E-ZBody and then fray it if you'd like, but to get a really nice flashy tail, what we're going to do is take a bunch of Bill's Bodi-Braid here. You could use whatever flash you like, but I like the Bill's Bodi-Braid for this sort of application. I've been using it more and more. And we're going to take it and fold it to where we essentially have like 8 pieces with some loops. So that way we can cut the loops and get a nice flashy tail. And we're just going to jam that right in the back of this E-ZBody here. So we can just stick that in. You want to make sure it's far enough in to where you can actually secure it properly. And then what we can do is take our thread. You want to pinch the material as hard as you can. And what we're going to do is just essentially wrap down and try and cinch it as nice and tight as possible to make sure that that flash isn't going to go anywhere. And after getting it secured where I like it, we can kind of cut this. You can cut it or whip finish, doesn't matter. You can do it however you like. But we're just going to cut all the loops out here, and then we can go ahead and take our thread and throw a whip finish in here. You can see the Bill's Bodi-Braid just gives us a nice kind of flashy tail to give us some movement, because this fly is going to be coated entirely with either epoxy or UV resin is what we're going to be using. So that little flash sticking out the back is going to give us some nice movement as the fly is fluttering down with the sinking line. So again, I'm just kind of checking out the shape and profile, pulling the material if I need to get that shape the way I want it. You can see here, I'm just kind of compressing that E-ZBody again, making sure that it's nice and flat. So what we could do now is take our fly, put it back in the vise, and this is the fun part. This is where we can take some Sharpies and Copic markers. Use whatever you have. Sharpies are nice, and the Copic markers, because they last a while, like they're pretty durable. It won't wash out and get faded too quickly. And what we're going to do is we're just going to start off with a lighter color, and we're going to coat the top half of the fly. Just pick a side and make that the top. I don't think it really matters in particular. And I'm going to start off with some yellow here, and this is just going to give us a nice lighter transition point from that silver or that pearl color, I should say. Now you can always just do one single color up top, but I have multiple different markers, and I want to kind of go from a transition from the yellow to darker colors. So I'm going to take my Copic marker here and pretty much go almost over the entire yellow section with some olive, but leave some of that yellow underneath the olive. You don't have to be perfect, but it's nice to have a nice transition point on there. So now what we can do is take some blue, and one thing I wanted to show you here is the nice thing about the E-ZBody is the way that it's woven is not all of the material will get the color. So by kind of jittering and moving the marker kind of around sharply and not just perfectly rubbing it all on, I'm getting some of that blue coating on just some of the E-ZBody. So it kind of gives us a really nice natural scale effect. And last but not least here, I really like using something dark for the top, so a nice black Sharpie. Just coat the entire ridge or the back of the baitfish. A lot of baitfish naturally have a dark back and a light belly, so. I didn't go for any color in particular, but this fly could easily probably be like some sort of sardine fly, some sort of herring or something like that. Again, you could probably change the fly up with hook sizes and what size tubing you use. And just changing the color of the Sharpie, right? But this could easily be some sort of herring or anchovy sort of fly. Or peanut bunker, if you will. So now we could take a red Sharpie and just throw a gill in here. And I like throwing a red gill in a fly like this. Reminds me of a lot of older flies that I used to look at back in the day. And now we can take some eyes. These are 930 seconds, I think, or 530 seconds. We're just going to take some stick-on eyes here, whatever size you'd like, and we're just going to stick these on. Now, using a little super glue helps because we are going to be gluing these. Now, on this section up top, there was that raised bump from where I tied the thread down. So it seemed to help by using some super glue. I was able to have this eye be nice and secure for when we glue it. And just using my thumb and index finger here to squeeze those eyes. Pretty much making sure that they're nice and secure, as well as making sure that making sure that the profile isn't too raised on them. Bending and manipulating the hook and the E-ZBody. This is sort of the shape that I'm trying to achieve. If you've ever seen like a dried peanut bunker on the beach, or like a dead peanut bunker in the water just floating there, they kind of curl up in that almost like rigor mortis shape. That's kind of what we're trying to achieve here. And as well as getting some shape to the E-ZBody, almost like a spoon, like a crocodile spoon, if you will, or something like that. Again, you're not going to be stripping this fly or reeling it in like you would a spoon, but that's kind of like the shape that we're going for, if you will. So now one thing I wanted to point out is that what I could have done is I could have, with a longer hook, or just by manipulating where that tubing would be, or the hook point would come through the tubing, the way that the original fly was tied by the creator, it essentially has a hook point coming out further in the bend of that tubing. So it's something I just wanted to point out. So now to glue this fly, of course, you could take something like epoxy and put it on a drying wheel like we used to use back in the day, and many people still do. Just I've pretty much transitioned to UV resin, even though it is a lot more expensive. It's so much more convenient for modern day fly tying. So what we're going to do is take some medium resin here. Now I think you could probably use flex resin, but I don't mind that this fly is rigid. That's kind of the whole idea behind it. It's like a spoon. So we're just going to take a pretty healthy amount. We don't want too much. We just want to lightly coat the entire surface of the tubing and the fly. Of course not the tail, but we just want to coat the thread and all of our E-ZBody here. You don't want too thick of a coat on here, because the whole idea is we just want to start off with a very light coat, let any of that resin spread evenly, naturally coat all of the surface, and then we can go back over with another coat after this to fill in any imperfections. So just let that resin kind of work itself around. Of course, you're going to use your bodkin, making sure you go 360 degrees all the way around the spoon, if you will, or the fly. And it's good. What you can do is every once in a while, as you slowly turn it and work with it, is just let the resin kind of settle naturally. It'll do that itself, but that's where having like a drying wheel or just turning your vise helps to make sure that resin doesn't pool in one particular area. So after spreading that around and being happy with it, we could take our light here. Now, something I want to point out, this is something you got to deal with UV resin. It is very reactive to light, right? To the UV light. That's how it cures. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see it actually move. So once it started coming towards me, that's kind of where we wanted it. But see how it started bending away? I kind of let back off on the light and switched it around. Now what you can do is you can hold it in place and hit it with the light. But I knew from experience that a certain material like this, even just like bucktail, if you hit it with the light, with the resin, it'll either curl away or towards the light when it cures. So just knowing that it would get that sort of twist shape, I kind of let it do its thing and then spun it and let the light on and off. So essentially I was able to achieve this really nice kind of twisted baitfish, you know, this curled up rigor mortis baitfish shape. But I think what you could do is if you wanted to get it perfect every single time, you could hold it in place and hit it with the light. So you can see here the fly is somewhat durable. I wouldn't fish it with one single coat like this. It'll probably crack. So what we want to do is you can even see there's like you could see where the resin settled in between the woven E-ZBody. So we're just going to do one more coat, pretty much the same amount, maybe even less. Again, we don't want it to be pooled up in any areas or be too thick. We want it to be a nice, even, flat finish. It's okay if it's not 100% perfect, but you can see here, if we need to, especially up on top where the ridge is, I can add a little bit more and work that resin evenly around. I suppose if there was going to be a spot where you would want a little bit more resin, it would be right where that bend of the hook meets the body, just so that it doesn't break or snap. But again, the fly is fairly durable with 2 coats and the rigid E-ZBody. So I don't know if this is the sort of fly that if you smack it up against the side of the boat, you know, it'll probably get banged up. But then again, any sort of UV resin or epoxy fly, including surf candies, that will happen to it. So even after the first coat, you could see there once hitting it with the light, it did slightly move a little bit. It's very interesting how UV resin reacts when you cure it. The resin heats and it can push and pull. There's some sort of chemical reaction that happens to where resin reacts in very interesting ways. So, but you can see here now, this is essentially the finished Albie spoon, and I think I did a pretty good job. I think if we went with a longer shank, we probably could have got a little bit more to the original or the true shape of the fly. But again, this sort of fly is designed to be not stripped. It's designed to be essentially dead drifted or fished with a sinking line around blitzing fish. And then you essentially let the fly flutter down as it drifts out of a bait ball. And that's where, you know, striped bass, albies, bonito, Spanish mackerel, they're looking for these easy targets to get an easy meal. But I gotta say, once you hit that E-ZBody with the marker, I was just having a lot of fun filming this and looking at all the colors with the yellow, the olive, the blue, the black. I think it came out pretty well. So unfortunately, I can't take this fly and fish it because it's December, because it's mid-December right now, and it's been 20 degrees every day. But I'm curious how this fly reacts when you like fish it in very slight current. Like, can you take it? Can we take this and swim it in a creek, for instance, and just let it drift? You know, or how would it react? Or potentially, if we're worried about it spinning, like a lot of, you know, flies like this would when you're stripping it, can you use some sort of barrel swivel setup to where the fly can spin but the leader won't? You know, I'm curious with this sort of stuff. I think we're going to be, we might experiment fishing with these sort of things for straight bass here in the future. It's a very interesting fly and something where I've never really given it a try. I've seen a lot of different sort of spoon flies, and a lot of them are like metal, essentially like spoons, or there's some that are made with this sort of stuff like E-ZBody, or they shape the body out of some sort of material. But I've never personally messed around with this sort of fly. So, I mean, I think in the water you could see it has great action if it's just sitting there fluttering in the current, right? But once we let it further back into the swim tank, it starts to want to do like that kind of spinning movement. Again, this fly is designed to be fished around bait balls and blitzing activity and twitched as it's free falling, so, and allow us that flutter activity, if you will. Anyways, I thought this was a very interesting fly. It's not like anything we've ever tied here on the platform, so I wanted to give it a go. And shout out to Bill from E-ZBody. He gave me some information and some photos on this fly because it's tied by a good friend of his. And so again, shout out to Bill for sending some materials for me to try out. We got a link to their website in the description down below. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Mike from LI Flies Mike. If you got your hype points, use them. Just click on the description. You'll see some little hype symbol or star symbol, I think. Just give that a go and maybe hype up whatever videos you watch throughout the day that you really liked and that are from your favorite YouTubers here on this platform, because it really does make a difference. Thank you again. My name is Mike from LI Flies Mike. We have new fly tying and fly fishing videos coming out every week. We have live fly tying on Friday nights and early access of videos for members. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your season out there this year. And as always, tight lines.